All right, welcome to our 1099s and Compliance Made Easy webinar. I'm just going to give us a few minutes to let our attendees trickle in. Going to give it just another minute here while we let our participants join. Hope you all are having a great day. While our numbers are still climbing, I'm going to go ahead and go over a few housekeeping notes. So as a reminder, to qualify for CPE, you must actively respond to all of our polling questions and stay on for the entire duration of our broadcast. But if you have any technical difficulties responding to our polling questions, please just send an email over to elevate@armaninollp.com with the name and today's date of this session, along with your polling responses, and we'll get that fixed for you. Any questions or comments you have for our team during this webinar, just go ahead and put them in chat or in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them as we have time. And anything we don't have time for, we can respond to directly after our webinar. So our questions, I'm seeing a question within our chat that's asking, are the polling questions within the Zoom app? And yes, they are in the Zoom app, and this session is only an hour long. So hang in there with us and you'll get an hour of CPE. All right, I'm seeing our numbers start to slow down. So I'm gonna pass this over to Eric Thomas.
Thanks, Marcy. So we brought the experts today. There are 5 experts on here, none of them named Eric. Tyler and Young Sung are the experts in the 1099 compliance process. Everything you want to know about 1099s, they are your team. We have a very complicated subject matter in equity and RSUs and ISOs and a lot of other 3-letter acronyms, and Nikki Rahimi is our expert on that. We brought not 1, but 2 experts on GP and the correlation with GP and 1099s here. So you guys are in for a treat today. I'm Eric Thomas, partner in the consulting practice, and will be playing the role of MC for this session. Okay, so let's go through our learning objectives. So we're going to talk about meeting the tight filing deadline. 1099s come up every year. It's a once-a-year thing, and then there's always a rush. We're going to discuss strategies how to avoid that year-end rush. And then if you're on Dynamics GP, or even if you're not, we're going to go over how we can help you support any issues you may have with filing 1099s on your GP platform. In addition to those learning objectives, we're also going to discuss equity and how it can be involved in the 1099 process, how Armanino can help you through this annual compliance process. And then if we have any time, we'll go into frequently asked questions. So let's jump into it. We're going to talk compliance first. Young Sung, can you tell us about these deadlines? Like, how can we help people meet the tight filing deadline?
Right. The secret to meeting the deadline, I hear the echo too. Is that me?
Yeah, I heard it too.
I don't hear deadline or an echo. I'll go on mute.
Okay.
Me too.
So the secret to meeting the deadline is always you start fast, early in the game. So, before I talk about some of the, good practice, why don't I just, talk about the actual filing deadline set by the IRS. So the filing due date for 1099 NEC, non-employee compensation, the new form, they brought it back last year, is going to be January the 31st of next year, 2022. And the same date applies for the recipient copies. Right, so recipient copies for all types of 1099 forms, 1099 NEC, miscellaneous, dividend, interest, all type of 1099 forms are due to the recipient by the January 31st of 2022. For all the other type of forms, with the exception of 1099 NEC, they're due with the IRS by March the 31st, if you're e-filing it. For those of you who are planning to paper file, then the filing due date with the IRS is going to be February 28th. Okay, so to elaborate on some of the things that you can do, best practice is the one of the best way to meeting the deadline is always getting a head start, right? So a lot of the common issues that you're going to run into as you head into the 1099 season is that you come to realize you're like deep in the game. What I mean by that is you're already in the January 20th, final weeks of January, and you're trying to really rush through, and you realize some of the important information like vendor's EIN is missing, and you call them, right? And then they don't pick up the phone, or you send an email, they don't respond. And it's really common. It's not rare. It happens quite a bit. So, what you can do is to, really make sure you go back through your vendor list to make sure that you have all the information that you need. And as we enter in the month of December, you still have lots of time for that. So you would really need to, get a head start on that.
For us, it feels like 1099 season starts the day after Halloween every year. It's kind of like turn that calendar and then it's 1099 season again. So if people do want help, Young Sung, what's the best time for them to reach out to us?
I would say now. I think now is the best time because we're not really we still have month of December, right? We need the full December payments to be able to capture all of that as a for the full year. So if you have any questions or concerns or planning anything that you need, now is the time. Then you can definitely reach out to us, ask for guidance or help, and we'd be more than happy to help in any way that we can.
So
I
have a question about that. But so being realistic, right? We always say start early, but these are something that right now is important but not urgent, and people are doing all kinds of other year-end prep. What's our deadline for us to guarantee that they can get their filing done on time, right? So people realize I don't have time, I don't have bandwidth, I have issues, I need help. What's that drop dead date for us to be able to help them and file on time?
Yes, so in order for us to guarantee on-time filing, it's going to be January 20th. What we need to have the information that we need to file your 1099s by January 20th.
So we had a question about the deadlines. Could we say it again? So
sure.
When we're done this section, can you type it in the chat? Just because I know that it's the January 31st, February 28th, and March 31st, and just put those in there. That way they can copy and paste them, because there are multiple deadlines and there's a bunch of if-thens related to those deadlines.
Absolutely. Great idea.
Great. Young Sung.
Yes.
Any other questions or any other things you want to copy before we move on to Tyler's section?
No, I think that wraps it up. I'm gonna just type in all the write-up of the filing deadlines for all these forms in a second.
Awesome. Thanks, Young Sung. All right, Tyler, why are we here today?
So we're here today to add a little information to everything that Young Sung just said, specifically centered around the NEC. As he mentioned, the 1099 NEC form is back to stay. It's not going anywhere. This year, the IRS has included the NEC form in their combined state and federal filing program. Now, that program is when you e-file with the IRS, any state involved in that will automatically receive that form, and additional filing is not required. Last year, the NEC was not a part of that because it came out so late or so late in Q4. This year, it is a part of that program. It's also important to note that there has been changes to the 1099 miscellaneous form. It's no longer called miscellaneous income. It's now called miscellaneous information, such as fishing boat proceeds, rents, gross proceeds to attorneys, multiple information that just doesn't fit on any other form. Another thing to note is that the NEC form has changed from last year to this year. Mostly the format. They did remove the FATCA filing box from having a numbered box to just being a checkbox. And they did add a section for indicating whether there was $5,000 of direct wholesales made to a retailer. Now, with all this information and all these deadlines that Youngsun talked about, there are penalties associated with this. And contrary to popular belief, these penalties can be hefty based off the timing. Most penalties run up to about $50 per form if they are up to 30 days late. Anything over 30 days late is about $110 per form. Now, the penalties are on a staged or a tiered process. It's up to 30 days, 31 days up until August, and then August to intentional disregard. The maximum penalties can reach about $500,000 depending on whether you're a small business employer or a large business employer. And that's based off your gross receipts, which is $5 million. If you're at 4 million, you're small. If you're at 5.1 million, considered large. So now what we're going to do is make sure that you guys are ready for this. So Marcy, if we want to go ahead and launch our next slide.
Thanks, Tyler. So I am about to launch our first polling question. And just a reminder that you must answer every polling question in the webinar in order to receive that super important CP credit that, that we all need for end of year. All right. So here is our first polling question. The question is, are you ready to file your 1099? There's no correct answer on this one. Just let us know where you're at in your filing. I'm seeing some participation, about 70%, so I'm going to give it a few more moments. All right, we're at 82%, so I'm just going to count us down. Make sure to get that answer in. 5, 4, 3. Oh, I still see people answering. Here we go. Give it a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And let's check out these results.
So Tyler, Youngsung, how does this compare to what you're expecting and what the results were last year?
I actually expect this. 1099s, unfortunately, are something that kind of get put on the back burner because, like you said, there's a lot more urgent matters that need to be done right before year end. Unfortunately, 1099s are equally as important because of the complexity needed from third parties.
I was expecting more like 80-20, so 80% saying no, 20% saying yes. So I think more people are ready to file, so that's good to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited for that. All right, so now that we've talked about deadlines and a bunch of new changes, now we want to make sure that, are you ready for this? For the roughly, I think it's at 68% of people that are not ready, there's quite a few things you can do now in order to prepare, such as, is your fire system set up through the IRS to file electronically? If do you have all your W-9s for your vendors to make sure you have accurate information? Is your accounting software updated with the most recent update to handle these new format changes of the forms? And is it even mapped properly? Are you going to have NEC or NEC compensation pulled to the NEC box, or is it still going to be pulled to miscellaneous? So in order, what we can do to actually help you with that last part is, if for some reason you have it running, or you're running into an issue pulling from your ERP system, specifically GP, we have people that can help you. So Becca, if you want to go ahead and start talking about that.
Sure. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we definitely want to make your 1099 processing as easy as possible for you this year. So I'm going to go over a couple of options that will complement the Armanino 1099 service for our Dynamics GP clients to help with the data extraction from GP. So our 1099 service will provide a template to use, and it's important that the data coming out of GP matches the template format. So Armanino can assist our Dynamics GP clients with a couple of options in getting the data out of GP for the 1099 template. So option one, for those clients that want to get the data out of GP on their own, Armanino can help to make this manual process a little easier for you. We will provide a custom view package for a DIY or do-it-yourself installation. That will include instructions for the installation and the extraction of the 1099 data to put it into that required template format. And option two would be, if you would like to have Armanino do the work, we will manually extract the data from your GP into the 1099 required template format for you. And this would just be done on a time and materials basis. If you have a current managed services plan with us, your managed services lead can assist you and provide the options available within your plan. But either option that may suit you best, you can create a ticket in our customer success portal or send an email to the help@armaninollp.com email address, and just note in the subject header that you would like Armanino 1099 service support with either option 1 or 2, and our customer success team will reach out to you for next steps and can bill you accordingly. Additionally, you can look for those option details on the Armanino 1099 landing page on our website to create your ticket with the customer success team. As you can see here, the customer success contact information is noted on this slide as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. So we can provide the services, but why would people come to us instead of just doing it themselves?
Yeah, so there's this is Albert, by the way. So there's a couple of, I would say, common situations where customers would need help. One is they may not have the expertise, to do a SQL installation and pulling data from a SQL view themselves, right? And so in that case, we can certainly help. But I think the situation where this comes up the most is for clients that are not running a GP payroll or have a specific hot fix that's going to get addressed by the most recent year-end update. The process of doing a year-end update or an upgrade is substantial, both in cost and time and effort that's involved on their end, as well as on the Armanino side. And so this is a really great option to really, in essence, forego the whole process of doing a year-end update or an upgrade, and obviously for a much lower cost, but also much lower effort on their part. So those are usually the use cases that we experience.
So to pull on that a little bit, I know software upgrades can be as easy as a patch is done overnight or very involved. Would they even have time if they wanted to do this now, starting on December 1st, to do an upgrade, or is that window kind of closed for this 1099 season?
Well, year-end updates are typically applied within the last week or the first week, within the last week of the year or the first week of the following year. So it is a tight window. To get into the queue, however, we would need to have basically all the particulars of a a contract and everything in place actually by the next couple of days so that we can queue up and have resources available.
Great, thanks, Albert.
Mhm.
So we're due for another polling question, but we've actually got a really engaged audience here, peppering Tyler and Youngsung with details on detailed questions about really 1099 types, NACs, miscellaneouses. Are you two able to answer all these questions via chat, or is there anything you want to cover verbally before we go on to the next polling question?
And part just to touch up on corporations real quick. So S corps and C corps do not require a 1099 unless they are a law firm or a medical professional. They do not meet that criteria of not receiving a 1099 being a corporation because of their type of business.
Thanks. I told you these guys are experts. Tyler's personalized license plate is just 1099-NEC. It's crazy. I don't know how he got that.
And then
All right.
Suzanne's question and is going to be, are you saying we can use a 1099 NEC for law firms? The answer is yes. I think it may be a good segue maybe to talk about that, you know, a lot of the people, common mistakes that we see, payments to attorney. Tyler, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So because the NEC is now its own form, there's a bit of confusion on the types of payments to law firms. If you pay a law firm for a standard legal service, such as representing you, drafting contracts, helping with escrow, whatever the case may be, that is in the course of their business or trade. That is NEC. That's not employee compensation, box 1 of the new form. If for some reason you're in a settlement or a litigation and you need to pay another law firm the settlement payment to go to a plaintiff, that payment is considered gross proceeds to attorney, which will be box 10 of the 1099 miscellaneous. These are typically made out to lawyers that you do not work with on a normal basis.
Great. We had one just pop in. Are 1099s required to be sent to vendors from whom merchandise for resale is purchased?
If it's more than $5,000, yes.
Yes. And what's the penalty? Let's say you file, but you do it on the incorrect form. And that probably happens a lot with the changes with NEC and the miscellaneous.
Does happen a lot. If you notice that you file on the wrong form, try to get it corrected as quick as possible. If for some reason, most of the time the IRS will send out a notice saying, hey, this doesn't look correct. You need to issue the new form. You still met the filing requirement. However, you did it incorrectly. Do it as quick as you can. Despite what people think, the IRS is or will work with you on incorrect filing such as that. But it's important to own up to it and fix it as soon as you notice it's there.
I mean, generally the IRS is like the principal's office. I spent a fair amount of time in there. And if you're telling yourself up front, they're much more lenient than if they catch you later. Can you do a quick repeat on the merchandise part? I think someone must have broken up.
Yeah, so if you're selling merchandise to a wholesaler for resale, anything made or any payments over $5,000 is reportable. Now, say if you're just buying merchandise of your own to then sell yourself, that stuff is not reportable. So if you say you're ABC Trucking Company, you're purchasing shirts and then resell, you don't have to do that. However, if you're selling your product to a wholesaler and is equal to $5,000 or more, that's when a 1099 obligation does come into effect.
So I'm going to answer this one because it's easy. Is there any limit to not report a 1099? And that is under $600. So this limit was established years ago and has not been indexed for inflation at all. So it's very low. There's a good one on here that's unusual. Tyler, you're going to have to get your microphone closer. People aren't hearing you that well. How about students who receive a stipend or scholarship of less than $10,000? Do they have to receive a 1099 NEC?
So anything related to a scholarship or a stipend, if it's for schooling, will actually come on a 1098-T from your institution reporting that payment. It won't be an NEC. It's not non-employee compensation.
Great. So a lot of these are coming under the FAQ, and I think we'll just spend the rest of the hour answering all of these. So let's go on to the next question so people can get their CPE, because for a lot of these people, they may already be 1099 experts and still need to get that CPE because we are getting towards the end of the year.
Sounds like a great plan, Eric. All right, so let's move on to polling question number 2. Everyone get ready so we can get those CPE results. All right. So polling question number 2, for Dynamics GP clients, what option of service will you likely use? DIY with custom view package provided by Armanino. I will have Armanino's customer success team manually extract, or we will not need any assistance and can pull the data on our own. Seeing those results fly in.
All right, so Rebecca, Albert, to save a little bit of time, I'll ask my question ahead of time. Please provide feedback on how these results ended up with what you expected and what you've seen in past years.
And we're sitting at 68% of results. Let's get that answer in so you can get the all important CPE credit you're here for, along with all of our wisdom. I'm seeing 69%, so I'm going to give us 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to share these results. What do you think, Rebecca?
I don't see the results.
Yeah,
Albert, do you see?
I don't see them either.
Yeah, they didn't pop up. There we
They
go.
are.
Oh, there
Here we go.
You know, my guess is that the ones that don't need assistance really aren't Dynamics GP customers. So my guess is the breakout of the DIY versus using our services probably feels like it should be that way. I mean, most of our Dynamics GP clients have been using the system for a number of years and they're pretty comfortable in it. It's just a matter of extracting that data and having it in the format. So yeah, I don't think that's far off.
I would agree.
Thank you both. We're going to get into equity. You know, everybody talks about 1099s, but Nikki here wants to talk about 3921s in addition to 1099s.
Yes, good point, Eric. Yeah, we have these non-cash, really, well, somewhat cash, but these kind of enigmas amongst the other standard income type transactions that you guys have to consider. So if you do have equity, stock options, restricted stock awards, all those, warrants, et cetera, you still have to think about taxes related to them. And so here I'm listing the primary tax events for the most part for your standard stock options and awards. The first, and these are the events that you would have to pay taxes on or income taxes on, and I'll get to the non-taxable events later. So the primary non-qualified stock option exercises. So whenever someone exercises their non-qualified option, they'll be taxed at the time of exercise, and that'll be income tax, and I'll speak to the value later. Restricted stock units, whenever they vest, you will have a tax event, and you could have multiple events per year. Ideally, you don't have too many to coordinate, but sometimes that happens. And then the last part, restricted stock awards, which have the same situation as restricted stock units. You have tax at the time of vest. The nice thing with restricted stock awards is you could have, the employees could elect the 83B election. And that with that, they can choose to pay all taxes for all shares upfront on the date of grant. The idea being that potentially they'd have a lower tax rate. Fair market value may go up in the future. So either tax rate or value at the time of grant versus later on when the shares vest. So yeah, so these are pretty much the primary standard events that you would have to think about throughout the year for your stock awards.
So if those are what is taxable, what does the IRS actually tax, Nikki?
Good question, Eric. So that takes us to our next slide here. So what is the kind of impact? So for the disqualified option exercises, the tax is at exercise date, and it's going to be the difference between the fair market value at exercise. So if you're private, that's usually your 409A. Public, your fair market value. Either you're going to choose your close price or your interim price during the day at time of exercise. So depending on the system and how accurate you want to be. And then so that spread. So the fair market value less exercise price. Ideally, that is positive. If it's negative, you're not going to book a negative income. So just the positive income that'll be taxed at income tax rates applicable to the employee. For RSUs and RSAs, it's going to be the spread, but typically RSUs and RSAs don't have a purchase price. Some of them do, so you would be similar to exercises where you do the fair market value less that purchase price, but typically there's zero purchase cost. So really it's just going to be the fair market value at the time of vest event. And depending if it's RSA election or 83B election at the time of grant. So those are the ones where you do have the immediate income tax. So those RSU vest, RSA vest, non-qualified exercise, income tax. With ISO exercises, incentive stock options, which I'm sure many of you, if you do have options, you do have the incentive stock options for your US employees. There is no immediate tax at exercise, so they can exercise freely, no cash, aside from the exercise cost, of course, no cash for taxes or income tax. And as long as they hold on to those shares within the minimum holding requirements for an ISO, which is 2 years from grant, 1 year from exercise, then they wouldn't be subject to any income taxes. If they do sell after those holding periods, then they get the beneficial capital gains rather than income rates. All right, so the one other kind of enigma, and we'll go to the next slide here, is employee stock purchase plans, and primarily this would apply to public companies. We don't have a whole lot of private that are doing it, but potentially. With ESPP, so employee stock purchase plan, and let me know, and I'll see if there's any questions on some of the acronyms I'm using. You're going to have purchases, typically twice a year for most companies. They have 2 offering periods per year. Purchases are not subject to tax, and I'll speak to, with ISO exercises, you do have a AMT impact at year end, potentially, if applicable to the employee. With ESPP, there's nothing really. The spread at purchase would be used at a later date if and when shares are sold. So, most ESPP plans are qualified, which means they do get that beneficial tax treatment. You don't have the immediate tax consequences at purchase. Rarely there are non-qualifying ESPPs. I haven't seen too many, or I can't recall having one to deal with before, but if it's a non-qualifying ESPP, which there's a lot of detail on what's qualifying versus not. So with a non-qualifying, you would pay income taxes at purchase of shares through the plan. So something to keep in mind depending on whether applicable to you guys. Right, and so the next slide speaks to
We had a question about stock options that are issued to employees. Would these be included in a 1099 NEC? And I think your next slide is going to answer that question directly.
Yeah, well, the next slide speaks to the employees, yes. And so for the NEC, I think that the 1099, we're doing W-2. So if employees, it's W-2 income. 1099 would be if you have a non-employee exercising, a consultant, let's say, who receives an option, outside vendor, some situation like that. So that's where the 1099 would come in. Yeah, good question. And then for your employees, the 3921, 3922. So these are for your incentive stock options and ESPP qualified type purchases. So for the non-qualified exercises, the RSUs, RSAs, we don't have these year-end statements. They have the at transaction. So for your special case scenarios, incentive stock option exercises, as long as they're qualified, they held onto those shares, you would issue 3921 statements at year end for all those exercises. This is informational and also potential if the employee is subject to AMT, they would have the 3921 to use for those calculations. For ESPP purchases, you need to submit 3922s for each employee that purchased shares during the year, actually purchased, not just enrolled. And those are really, as long as it's a qualified plan and they haven't sold shares, it's purely informational. Since the purchases aren't subject to AMT, there's not that aspect like with ISOs. So again, you want to definitely send those out. As with the other forms, as Young Sung mentioned, we've got to get those forms out to the employees and yeah, pretty much employees at the end of January. If you're filing with the IRS, ideally e-filing, it'll be due March 31. If you're not e-filing, February 28. So yeah, so
thanks, Nikki. And we had one question just to confirm that stock options issued to non-employees are included on the 1099 NEC.
Well, not just issued, but exercised. So if they're exercised, yeah. If you issue options, there's no taxes.
It's not
exercise is where it comes in, yeah. So that's, yeah, get them, hold them, no tax, no worries.
Okay, so we're up for our third polling question where we're gonna, really make people earn their CPE now. We've got a question very specific to the subject matter we just covered.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So just a reminder, you don't have to get the question correct in order to receive credit. So don't stress, just do the best you can. Nikki shared a lot of great information with us. So polling question number 3. What type of option is subject to income tax at exercise? ISO, which is incentive stock option, ESPP, which is employee stock purchase plan, non-qualified stock option, which is an NSO or NQSO, or all of the above. Don't forget to answer this polling question to get that all important CPE credit that we're here for. I'm seeing participation at about 60%, so I'm going to give it just another minute so everyone can get their credit.
Nikki, as a CPA, are you current on your CPE?
I am, yeah. So hopefully I'm getting a yes. I was like, I've got another year to go, so I'm halfway there, luckily.
All right, we're at 70%. So I'm going to close this poll pretty quickly here. Hit an answer to grab that credit. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's check out these results. So what do we think, Eric and Nikki?
Well, actually, so let's see, we got 15% that got it right. So non-qualified stock option is the right answer. Incentive stock options, no income tax at exercise, as long as they're qualified, they're not selling the shares within the minimum holding requirements. ESPP, no tax at all. Again, any disqualifications, of course, but nothing at purchase. So yeah, and then of course, well, all of the above just negates that. So that's where, we come in, and these are, I'm not surprised because the tax questions related to equity, there's quite a bit of, confusion where, what's applicable. So, we're definitely here to help. If you guys have further questions, I'll keep an eye out for, we do have, let's see, I don't know if you guys want to go on to the next slide, but I saw.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is, I think, a great transition. It's super complicated. Tyler's going to tell the audience how we can help if they need it.
Yes.
Thank you, Nikki.
Oh, definitely. Thank you, guys.
Correct. So with all this information, there's a lot. It hurts my head. There's easy ways that we can help you. We offer 2 separate options, a basic service and enhanced service. The basic is a DIY option where we will provide you the templates that are necessary to be filled out in order to file your forms, whether it's a 1099 NEC, a 3921, a 1099 MISC, a 1099B, whatever the type of form that you need to file, we have the template for you. We will file it for you, but we do require it to be filled out. The other option is the enhanced service option, where we will take a data dump of your vendor file. We will scrub it, ensure that you have all necessary information to complete the filings. Your recipient's tax ID number, their address, the amount paid, what type of ID, their legal name. We will go through that, scrub your data to make sure that you have all relevant information, and then file for you. For both services, what we offer is the e-filing with the IRS, filing with any applicable states that require additional filing, deliver recipient copies either via email or USPS postal mail. We will provide hard copies for you for your records. We will also conduct a tax ID verification check with the IRS and an address verification check with the USPS. So, a couple options we have. Each one is on a tiered basis depending on the number of forms you file. We can help as many forms as you need to do. We can do up to thousands of forms per entity. It is important to know that each 1099 filing requirement is on a per entity basis, meaning if you have a parent company that has, say, 3 or 4 subsidiaries, it's not just one 1099 filing requirement. Each of those entities do have their own 1099 obligation to be filed. If you're able to get this over to us, like Youngsun said earlier in the year or in the presentation, January 20th is our drop dead deadline to guarantee on-time filing. If you get us to before that, we can turn your information around in 24 hours, assuming there's no external issues that we run into.
I wanted to clarify one thing though. So when we say entity, we mean by those entities that have separate, unique tax ID, employer identification number, EIN or tax ID. Okay.
I saw a question come in here asking about the number of forms filed by paper versus electronic. Currently, the IRS threshold still stands at 250, meaning if you have 251 forms, you must e-file with the IRS. If you have 250 or less, you can paper file. However, the IRS is working on dropping that threshold to 100 starting next year. But if for some reason the IRS decides to release guidance before 12/31 of this year to drop it to 100, you will be required to e-file if you're at 110. I always recommend e-filing. It is the fastest and safest way to file with the IRS, as well as get confirmation that the filing was completed.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in and say we're getting surprisingly high volume of questions. Any that we don't get answered on this call, we will include in the FAQ that we'll publish after this. So we will get answers to all of your questions. We'll try to answer them as we go through the call, but they are kind of coming through faster than we can answer them, as we saw earlier. So we covered the services. Tyler, I jumped in. Were you done, or are we ready to go on to the next polling question?
We can go and move on to the next polling question unless you see questions regarding our service that I can clarify. Okay.
I mean, Tyler's been typing feverishly throughout this when he's not talking, so he's trying to answer them as quickly as they can via chat, the Q&A, and orally. So please keep the questions coming.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, Tyler, for answering all those questions for us. So we're going to move on to our final polling question number 4. So our question is, we offer 2 options for our 1099 services, basic and enhanced. What is the key difference between these 2 options? And Tyler just went over this, so hopefully we were listening. Our option number 1 is basic option. You will fill out the required templates, and enhanced, we will fill out the templates. Option 2 is basic option. We will fill out the required templates, and enhanced, you will fill out the templates. Option 3, enhanced option, we will pull the data from your software for you. Or option 4, basic option, we will gather the W-9s for you. So I'm just going to give us another minute to get that CPE credit going.
Tyler and Youngsung, as we kind of react to the results of this, use it as an opportunity to answer Tiffany's question, which is, can you go into detail about the different services again? We're kind of talking fast, so just kind of go through it, I think, at a high level, and then the detail of what the differences are between the services.
Yeah, so high level, 2 services, basic and enhanced. Basic is.
Well, we gotta wait. They gotta answer the question first.
Don't tell them the answer.
I'm trying to help with CPE.
You get in trouble.
I'll
We're
make
at
sure they get the CPE.
68%. So come on and participate so you get that credit. I'm gonna give us 5 more seconds. Three. Oh, I see it coming in. 2. Give y'all just an extra second. 1. All right, let's check out the results of this poll. What do we think, Tyler?
All right, so 40% of you did get it correct. The high level difference between our 2 options is that basic option, you will be required to fill out the necessary templates to complete the filing. Enhanced is we will fill out the necessary templates to complete the filing. We will require a data dump of your vendor information to complete that, but that's the high level key difference between the 2 services. All right, so I think Tiffany, that was the high level about it. To get into more detail, essentially, we will scrub your vendor file for the enhanced and let you know what information you're missing, whether it's a vendor tax ID number, missing their state, their city, their name, whatever the case may be. Basic is you will be filling all the information out, and we will process your 1099s and provide the deliverables, which are e-filing with the IRS, filing with applicable states if necessary, providing recipient copies, providing hard copies to you, as well as an address verification check with the USPS and a tax ID verification check with the IRS.
Great. So what are the next steps, Tyler?
Perfect. So next steps in order to get Armanino's help is head over to the website, located at the link below. That is our 1099 landing page, which will go over all the deliverables, the differences between the basic and the enhanced version or enhanced service, as well as a online fillable engagement letter to actually engage with us to do this for you. Once you download the engagement letter, fill it out, just send it over to compliance@armaninollp.com. From there, you'll receive an email confirming receipt, as well as what the next steps are based off the type of service that you provide. We will require payment up front. Once we get that, you'll receive a call either from myself or someone on my team to get the process started. All right. I'm seeing a question from Cecilia. The price between basic and enhanced is tiered. There's quite a few details on that, so it would probably be easiest to head over to our landing page to see what fits specifically for you.
Yeah, it's really volume number. So rather than individual forms, there's tiers of numbers of forms. And then Tyler, in the enhanced service, will you help screen their vendors to see if they require a 1099 or not?
So everything will be based typically off your W-9. We do ask that you grab W-9s up front to double check that, make sure that someone is either a corporation or not. The threshold we base off is a $600 threshold. Unless it is a royalty, then the threshold is $10. But if you have some sort of complex scenario, like some of the scenarios I've seen, I can help you with that. Whether it's, okay, we'll read through the type of payment, what services they provide, and let you know yes or no, do they need a 1099?
Yeah, basically in the enhanced, I mean, we can get in the custom services, but if we can help as much or as little as they need. All right, here's a hairy one. What about an American subsidiary, but located in Canada?
So if the American subsidiary pays tax, files a U.S. tax return, you're still obligated to file a 1099 if you meet the 1099 reporting requirements.
Can you say that last part again? You kind of faded out.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Yes, so if the American subsidiary pays U.S. tax, has a U.S. tax ID, and they meet the 1099 reporting requirements, you are required to report, regardless of whether they're located in Canada or not. It's all based off your U.S. tax ID number.
Great. And then one more, payments to board of directors.
I believe, yes, it is NEC. It is also determined on how you are paying them, as long as they're not on your payroll on your payroll. If they're on your payroll and you're paying it to them, it needs to be a W-2. There's a lot of caveats to that. We can get other subject matter experts on those types of payments if needed.
Okay, and what form do we use to issue, to report a payment made to someone outside of the United States?
So assuming they don't have a U.S. tax ID number, you may be required to report a 1042-S, which is payments made to foreign investors. If they have a U.S. tax ID number, typically they still fall under the same criteria as a normal 1099. So you'll have to ask for what's called a W-8 BEN or a W-8 BENE to get that necessary information.
Which is equivalent to W-9 for a U.S. person.
Thanks. And I have one for Nikki. What are the filing requirements for options granted to the employees of foreign subsidiaries?
Filing requirements for foreign subsidiaries. That I am not expert on foreign filing, unfortunately, but we could find I know we have some resources on that I could, depending on the location. Yeah, just it varies.
It depends on the inter-country agreements.
Yeah.
To some degree. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty much U.S. based, but I can always refer people out and find some resources depending on which location and who might know and cover what.
And
maybe
this one came up a few times. Do we have to report medical premiums to Kaiser or Blue Cross?
Determine on how they are paid. If you pay them through your payroll provider, no, because the money is actually coming from the payroll provider. You're paying your payroll provider to do that. If you pay them directly, yes.
I believe that if the employee is doing, or employer, it's covered under your 1095-C. And all right, we're starting to fade down. For a dividend paid for a publicly traded company who sends a 1099 div to each shareholder, is it the broker?
I don't quite understand that question.
I think, that's a 1099 div that comes from the broker or the holding company.
If it comes from
necessarily in board.
Yeah, so if the broker is sending the 1099 or sending the payment, the broker will be responsible for issuing the 1099. If the payment is coming from the publicly traded company directly, then the publicly traded company will be required to issue the 1099. I think that's what they're looking for.
Do we support NetSuite? I believe we're system agnostic, right? Because of our template.
We are.
So Intact, QuickBooks, NetSuite,
QBO,
GP, Oracle, SAP, any acronyms you can think of, we can help.
Yep.
All right, and so as we will be publishing, Marcy, I think you should wrap us up and talk about what we'll be sending the attendees.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric. So as a reminder, we will be sending you a copy of our presentation deck with a link to our webinar recording within 48 hours after the webinar. So keep a lookout for a follow-up email from us. And if there are any questions in the chat that for some reason we did not get to today, we will definitely get to your questions then. And because you have all of our contact information in the deck, feel free to reach out if you have any other questions or want some more information on your questions. That's what we are here for. And because we have another minute, we can go ahead and I'll pass it over to you, Young-sung. If you want to just review those deadlines once again, I know everyone was kind of excited when you were talking about the deadlines that are coming up. If you want to talk through those one more time so everyone has clarity.
Sure. So January 31st of next year is a filing due date with the IRS for Form 1099 NEC. That form is the form you give to your contractors, basically, right? The most common one. So the due date with the IRS is a 131. That is about the only form that is due with the IRS on January 31st, okay? All the other forms, 1099 dividend, 1099B, interest, 3921, all that is due March 31st, 2022, if you're e-filing it. Now, if you're planning to paper file, that filing due dates are going to be February 28th. 1099 NEC is still due January 31st, regardless. Now, recipient copies, regardless, all type of forms are due January 31st. So what does that mean? You might want to file, early, but you're still not required by the IRS to file until the filing due date that I specified just now. Is that clear to everybody?
I think that was great, Young-sung. Eric, are you seeing any other questions coming through the chat that you want to discuss before we wrap this up?
No, I think we're good. Let's end 3 minutes early. I want to thank everybody for attending. I know this is a busy time of year and appreciate you joining us. And thank all the presenters. We have yet to see someone stump Tyler. I'm hoping we do it next year. Thank you, everyone. Have a great and safe holidays coming up.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. All right, bye-bye.